Legend Total War here, and today we're going to be covering the Beastmen update and explaining all the changes that are going to affect the Beastmen come July 14th. I'm not going to be covering any of the DLC specific legendary lords or units. These are just for the existing factions and how they're going to change. Now, currently, the Beastmen are an awful race, right? And with this update, the big question I think that people are going to have is, are the Beastmen stronger than they were before, or are they weaker? Are they more fun to play now, or did they miss the mark and it's still boring? Because it's still a Horde faction, right? These are questions that need to be answered, and we will answer them at some point in this video. Now, I will say that this is the most extensive out of all of the reworks for any of the old world races. A lot of stuff has been changed. Now, if you followed what I was saying about the Wood Elf update back about 6 months ago, you'll know that although I think they made the campaign more fun, they definitely kind of hamstrung the Wood Elves in many ways. I was kind of critical about the Wood Elf update. I guess it leaves to be seen, did they do that with the Beastmen? Alright, let's go through the various things that have changed, and then we'll evaluate it. Okay, starting with the things that have been removed from the Beastmen. So what we've got here is a campaign with Kazrek the One-Eye Immortal Empires on turn 2. This is on a beta patch, so we've got all the changes. Things are subject to change a little bit further, but I think the core aspects of it will remain the same. So, Bray Herds, they're out. They're completely gone. No longer when you hit a high level of bestial rage will a stupid army that basically gives away your position and causes you all kinds of problems will occur. That stuff is completely gone, and thank God for that, because that was just awful. And they've still got bestial rage, but it just provides kind of like a bonus or a negative depending on how much you've got. So if you've got high bestial rage, it provides casualty replenishment, charge bonus, and horde growth. So it's good. And if it goes down here, you just lose growth, so it's not that big of a deal, and you can, use the sort of decimate button to get it back up again. So it's really quite easy to manage. I think they've done a good job with this. That's really all the stuff that's been removed. Now for all the stuff that's been changed, and this is the bulk of where the video is going to be. The primary thing that we need to talk about here is Herdstones, because this is the big major change. This is where the crux of your campaigns will be spent. Dealing with. So Herdstones are kind of like your settlements. You are still a Horde faction, but you do tether yourself to some regions. So what we want to do here is click on a region, Magritta. We're able to capture Magritta soon if I want to. Now, by clicking on this region, we've gotten ourselves an indication on where the blood ground is going to be. So if I put a Herdstone down here, it'll create a blood ground in all of these regions. And what that means is that in any of these regions that are highlighted in red, any victories that I get, any destruction that I do, is going to accumulate a destruction counter and eventually allow us to do a ritual of ruin, which will give us ruination tokens, right? So let's start doing that. If I win this, easy win. Raise the Herdstone. So we've got a Herdstone shard here. You start off with one, and you need one in order to do it. But you never truly lose any of your Herdstone shards. Okay? So, hypothetically, if we lost Magritta or I abandoned it, I would get refunded the Herdstone shard. When we complete the ritual, we'll get a Herdstone shard. So if you complete the ritual and then also abandon it, you actually end up with 2 Herdstone shards. So you only ever accumulate more Herdstone shards throughout the campaign. And what that does is it simply allows you to do more rituals simultaneously, which if you've only got one army, probably not a good idea to do that. But as you get more and more armies, you probably want to be putting down more and more Herdstones all over the place. Unless you want to put all of your armies in one location, which will just slow down your campaign, really. Okay, so what we've got here, this is the number specific to Magritta where your Herdstone is, and the way to check for that is obviously the like an icon moving towards the Mark of Ruins, Mark of Ruinations, is how much devastation we've caused so far in this blood ground. Now, if you get devastation for the initial capture of the settlement, but it doesn't remember the fact that I won 2 battles on the previous turn. So don't be like trying to save up loads of ruination before you put down the Herdstone. That doesn't work. It only counts once you've put down the the Herdstone. So if I was to go and blow up Bilbali, for example, I will gain 6 devastation. So this number here will go up to 12. It's not just about destroying settlements though, it's also about winning battles. So the more battles you win, I think each battle gives you between 2 and 4. So the more battles you win, the more times you destroy a settlement, the more devastation you accumulate. Now, another thing that the Beastmen really needed to have addressed is ruin dwelling. Currently, as in without the beta patch, it is very difficult to eliminate the Empire as any Horde faction because there is loads of Empire settlements, and keeping any settlement ruined permanently is basically impossible. Not completely impossible, but almost impossible. Now, has that been addressed with the Beastmen update? Yes. Once I've done a Ritual of Ruination, any of the Bloodground regions that are ruins will no longer be able to be occupied by the AI. In order for them to colonize those regions, they have to destroy the Herdstone. So for example, if I go over there, blow up Bilbali, they can still occupy Bilbali right now, but once I've done the ritual, if it's still a ruin, they won't be able to do it. So yeah, if you finish as many rituals as possible, it's possible, like for example, if you do it all in the Empire, to have the Empire just completely uncolonizable by the AI, and they can't do anything about it. They will go hunting for your Herdstones for sure, but they can't occupy the settlement. So I have actually managed to have the entirety of the Empire just completely full of ruins. They just can't occupy it. With plenty of ruination tokens as well. So that sort of thing has been solved. Now, this doesn't apply to the Warriors of Chaos. It only applies to the Beastmen. But I think in that regard, that aspect has been fixed. Okay, so what do ruination marks of ruinations? What do these do? So this is like your primary resource for completing the campaign. You want to be getting as many of these as possible, and as you reach further thresholds of them, you get various unlockables and bonuses, unlocking new army capacities, unlocking new units. Yeah, like for example, I won't be able to unlock. Hang on. That's the tech tree. I won't be able to unlock any Cygors until I've reached 150 marks of ruination. So you definitely want to be doing that unless you want to be just using basic units. So these ones here don't require any marks of ruination. Now, looking at Feral Manticores at the moment, we've currently got a capacity of 1. But I actually can't recruit any. So you need both the capacity of them and also the required building in order to recruit them. Now, let's talk about the economy of the Beastmen. So, we no longer have to pay upkeep or recruitment costs for them. So, in many ways, the Beastmen went from having an old greenskin mechanic to now being kind of like Tomb Kings. They don't pay upkeep for their units. They don't pay recruitment costs. It doesn't cost to recruit new lords. It doesn't cost to recruit new heroes. You just don't pay favor for that. The way that you pay with favor is with buildings. So buildings cost favor. Same thing at Magritta. There's small buildings, and we'll go onto that in a little bit. And you can also use favor to purchase these items. So this is kind of like the mortuary cult. If you've played the Tomb Kings, you'll understand that. You spend the favor, you get the item. So this one here is a good one. I like the Champion's Essence. So this one here provides regeneration and perfect vigor. Ward save, melee attack. This is a very powerful item, but it is very expensive as well. Blind Eye of Seeing, Winds of Magic, and provides bound spell, Savage Dominion. So this goes on spellcasters. There's some good items in here. So not a lot of selection. But, you know, what's there is not bad. So that's what favor is used for. Now, funny thing is that factions can come down into your Herdstone area and raid it and actually make money. And so you can actually go broke as a Beastman campaign. It is possible. It's very unlikely. Like, they'll raid you and you lose like 100 favor per turn. It's not that big of a deal, but it is possible. Okay, so the other resource that you'll have in your campaigns is Dread. Now, this is obtained pretty much the exact same way as favor. You gain it from killing things. So, enemy units killed, Torok's Rampage, which doesn't apply to this campaigns. There are some buildings that you can build which will give you a passive amount. So this one over here will give you passively 20 dread per turn. Now, unlike with favor, where you can essentially like lose the items or lose the buildings associated with that, anything that you purchase with dread, which is all purchased over here, is pretty much permanent. So increasing the capacities, you can never like lose your capacity for these things. So let's do some of this to give an example. Don't have a lot because it's only turn 2, but we've currently got 2 capacity for these for these two units here, these two Ungor Spearmen and Ungor Herd, right? If we do this, 85 Dread. And now we can recruit 4. Pretty easy to understand. Now the price didn't go up, but I think the price doesn't go up on the first one, but on the second time you do it, it does, and it keeps going more and more expensive as you go along. Now obviously these units here aren't anywhere near as expensive as, you know, upgrading a Cygor or a Jabberslythe. They can get extremely expensive to get a full stack of it. So getting a full spam of those units is not easy, but it is still possible. But you're definitely incentivized to make use of your entire roster, because if you could put all of your like dread into getting just Cygors, right? But that is way more expensive than having like a couple of every unit. So you are incentivized to having not necessarily more balanced armies, but having more variety of units across your armies. So you might want to have themed armies, like Taurox might have all Minotaurs, and maybe you'll have an army that's just all Centaurs. It's entirely up to you, but you're definitely incentivized to use your entire roster, just like with the Tomb Kings. So there's really no units here anymore, even giants, that are just like, I'm not going to get any of those. I mean, unless you would prefer like the units that don't have a cap. So the Ungor Spearman Herd, the Ungor Raiders are probably a better choice than the Ungor Herd, to be honest. So I probably wouldn't have normally increased my capacity for them at all. There's also items and followers that you can get to increase some capacity of things. Most notably, Chaos Spawn can be increased with certain items that you'll get fairly common. But not all of them get it. And also, the Morsley events will occur once every 8 turns. So it's 5 turns on this one till it shows up. And sometimes an event will show up that actually reduces the cost for some of them. I haven't seen the event for every single one to be increased. And what it does, it like reduces the cost of increasing it. So you might want to like accumulate dread, a lot of it, wait for the Morsley event, and it might make, for example, let's see, Razor Gore Chariots cheaper, and then instead of paying 255 to begin with, you might pay only 125, and then you just get like twice as many as that you would have if you wait for the right event for it. So sometimes waiting for the Dark Moon event to occur is pretty useful, and I think the Dark Moon events now are a lot better than they used to be. That sometimes they used to come with some pretty significant negatives. Now they're pretty much all just bonuses. So there's nothing really holding the Beastmen back anymore. They had a lot of stuff that was really sort of crippling them just within their own mechanics. They don't seem to have that too much anymore. Everything is just like, you just keep building more and more momentum. Every time you win, even if it's just a small battle, you get something, and you get something permanent, kind of. Because if you lose an army, as long as you don't lose the campaign, like, you can just re-recruit another army. Now, another thing, your Horde buildings, for your legendary lords, everything that you build in their specific horde is permanent, cannot be destroyed. I mean, you can demolish it yourself, but what I mean by can't be destroyed is that if your legendary lord's horde gets destroyed and then you re-recruit them, they'll remember all of the buildings that they had, and so you don't actually lose anything. But with the other lords, so for example, if we recruited this dude here and we maxed out all of his buildings and he got wiped out, well then all of his buildings get destroyed with it. So that's what I mean by this is not 100% permanent, but these ones here kind of are. Okay, so next thing to move on to is Confederations. Now, Confederations is completely different, and in some ways it's a little bit of a nerf with this. Beastmen can no longer confederate other minor Beastmen herds. So if you see another one just running around, you won't have the option to just diplomatically confederate them. Obviously because of army caps, just like with the other like Tomb Kings and Vampire Coasts who can't confederate, because there's various problems if they did that. So the way to confederate the other legendary lords now is now with Dread. So Malagor, Morgor, and Taurox currently exist on the campaign in their own hordes, and they'll be doing their own thing, and sometimes they'll get wiped out, and it's okay if they do get wiped out. So let's just say hypothetically Malagor gets wiped out on turn 2. He gets destroyed before you've got a chance to confederate him. So you pop down the Gain Lord, and he comes back with everything that he had, and as long as you're able to recruit a new horde, he comes back with all the buildings that he had and all the levels that he had. So not diplomatically do you confederate them. You can't meet them. I mean, you can go and meet them, but you can't diplomatically confederate them. This is the only way to get them into your faction. And when you do it, even if they exist on the campaign map, when you press this, it'll just remove their army and remove all of their stuff, except for heroes that are actually outside of their army. You actually confederate those straight in, but all of their army stuff gets destroyed, and you have to sort of re-recruit them from scratch. But they'll retain all their Horde buildings. Obviously, you won't be able to recruit Taurox if you don't own the DLC. It's the same thing with the Wargore. The Wargore is a DLC unit. So Gorbals and Bray Shamans, same thing, just based on hero capacity. And unlike the Tomb Kings, I don't think there's a limit to how many you can get. I think the limit's 100 on how many you can get. Although I didn't get anywhere close to that, so there might be another limit. I'm not entirely sure. I've managed to reach about 11 with them, so I would assume that that at least you could get to 20 with each of these heroes, maybe even further. So before, what we had to do to increase capacity is that you had to have another horde build those required buildings, which oftentimes took a long time. I think the Gorbal was recruited at like rank 4, so sorry, at tier 4. So it took ages to get your capacity for Gorbals up. Now, if you really want to focus on Gorbals, you just need Dread. Just get that Dread together, fight lots of battles, and get your Gorbals up. And I think what a lot of people are thinking about right now is, Legend, you haven't mentioned this yet. What about the Fear of Nurgle Stink? Come on, that's the only thing that we care about. Can you still do it? Look, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. The Fear of Nurgle Stink trait still exists. This is the one that did cause -5 leadership in the local region. Unfortunately, it has been nerfed. It is now, unfortunately, only -4 leadership in the local area. I know, it's a catastrophe. I'm just kidding. It's actually not really a nerf, because if you really want to do it, it's actually easier now, because it's easier to increase your capacity. Even though each individual trait is essentially reduced by 20%, like the amount of heroes that you can get seems to be a lot easier to get more of them. So you just get more of them, and because you can recruit and disband them for free, it's actually a lot easier to do it now, especially considering Wargores also get the Fear of Nurgle Stink, so there's 3 different hero types that can get it now, so it's actually kind of easier to do it. Moving on to upgrades. The most important upgrade here is this one here. This is the only one in this section that can be done multiple times. It just gives you an extra army. And I think the limit to that is 30. That's the limit I found. This is subject to change, but that's what I found was the limit. But yeah, just getting more armies, there's no downside to that, no extra upkeep cost. It just costs the dread requirement. So these other ones here. So if we have a look at Herdstones, this one's at rank 1, right? But they can go up to rank 5. Just provides a better garrison, provides extra, various bonuses here that you can see. Doesn't provide anything overpowered, but you can't get it until you unlock it. You have to go through the motions and just go through these individually. You can't go straight to tier 5. You have to do the previous ones. It's the same thing over here. You have to start with the new Horde upgrade. So this is where if you recruit a new army, it starts with buildings already built. So it just helps get your growth up and running a bit faster. Same thing with this here. Lords and Heroes recruit at rank 5. Although what it really means is Lords and Heroes are recruited plus rank 5. So this will recruit at rank 6, 11, and 16. Excuse me. So overall, the Dread, I think that's a great resource. There's really no downside to it. It's a fun, engaging mechanic that you're doing throughout the campaign, and you're always going to want more Dread. So I think that they did it really quite well. And then we've already covered the items there. Okay, let's cover the tech tree now. Excuse me. It's called Challenges of the Dark Gods, but really it's just tech tree. It's been completely changed, and the way it's not like a super strong tech tree, but it functions just fine. I think the techs are pretty good. Going through some of them, you basically unlock them by doing challenges. So you have to win 5 ambushes in order to unlock this one, which unlocks these here once you've researched it. Same thing, sort of thing here. Win 5 siege battles, perform 2 rituals of ruin, win battles against enemies of 4 different cultures. There's just things in here that will provide various bonuses, and you just research them. It doesn't take too long to get through all of them. I think that was fine. It's better than what they had before, but it's not as strong as like the Skaven tech tree. Okay, so also, every Herdstone that you have, you can build up to 2 of these buildings. So at the moment, because it's tier 1, we can only build 1. But once I think you get it to tier 3, you're able to build a second one. And then, of course, at tier 3, you can build them up to tier 3. This is another area where you can spend favor and end up losing it. So there are some significant bonuses in some of these. Not huge, like Dread gain from battles plus 20% faction-wide. I feel at the moment that one's a little bit bugged, because I think the equation is in 2 parts. There's like a base amount that you get from winning a battle, and then there's a casualties inflicted amount. And I think that the 20% gain from battles only affects the casualties, and the base amount is like the majority of where you gain it. So I got like a ton of these buildings, and it really only increased my dread gain from an average battle by only a small amount. But at the end of the day, it did provide winds of magic for the area. It does say all Bloodground regions, but really it seemed to only work in this one region here. So some of these descriptions are a little bit incorrect at the moment, but it's subject to change. The main real benefit to building this is just to have extra garrison, and I think one of the big benefits to what they've done here as well, you can see we've got a very large garrison here. In many of the other factions' garrisons, if you build too many garrison buildings that increase garrisons, a lot of the like artillery and stuff get kicked out in favor of like just melee infantry spam, just because they come up first on the list. But the way that they've done it with the Beastmen is that it kicks out the lower tier units first. So the Ungors will be kicked out of the garrison first, then the Ungor Raiders, and it'll pretty much always keep the Giants, Cygors, Minotaurs, all that kind of stuff. Those will keep, even when you've got essentially 27 units in the garrison sort of thing. So don't worry too much about, oh no, I'll build this building, but then the Cygor won't come out, and I'll just end up having loads of Harpies in. No, the Harpies will get kicked out. So lower tier stuff get kicked out first. So I think they did a good job with that, because that was an important thing, something to be addressed, at least with the Beastmen, if they were going to do it that way. And when you've got it at tier 5, these Herdstones are significantly defensible as well. Don't get me wrong, you can still lose, and they don't get walls, so it's still a field battle, but the garrisons that you can have are pretty significant. It would take like a significantly strong like Dark Elf or High Elf army in order to really overthrow that if you were at tier 5. And you can get to there pretty quickly if you focus on it. Alright, what are some other aspects? I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, special Herdstones. That's another thing I want to cover. So this one here is just a regular Herdstone. 99% of the regions on the map is just regular Herdstones, right? Now there are some special Herdstones, sort of like unique locations, but the game doesn't tell you where they are. So I had to go looking for them specifically. So here are some of the ones that I've found that provide, essentially if you put a Herdstone there, it provides you with a global bonus. I won't tell you what the global bonus is, but here are some of them. So there's you have to put it at the Oak of Ages, not around the Oak of Ages. It has to be on the Oak of Ages itself. Will get you a global bonus. Altdorf has one. Drakenhof, Karazukarak, Black Crag. Those are some of them that you can find. Some notable ones that you would think might have a special Herdstone but don't. Skaven Blight doesn't. Khemri doesn't. Black Pyramid of Nagash doesn't. Kislev doesn't. Hell Pit doesn't. So yeah, Corone does have a global bonus. I haven't managed to go around and check every region in the map yet, but I'm currently working on it. I'll let you guys know at a later date. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. So, now the big question. Are the Beastmen stronger or weaker than they are before? Are they more fun, or are they less fun than they were before? Starting with the stronger one. This update is a mega buff. Mega buff. This is the biggest buff any faction's ever gotten, really. They've gone from the weakest faction in the game, and I would say now that they are stronger than Greenskins, stronger than Dwarfs, stronger than the Empire. They're about on the same tier as Skaven. That's how strong the Beastmen are. Their economy, while they don't necessarily make a lot of money, they don't spend a lot of money, you don't feel yourself wanting for money a lot either. It's fairly easy to have lots of armies running around. When you lose an army, you just don't really care. It's not that big of a deal. So your ravenous, your momentum, if you're actually playing the game correctly, your momentum just keeps building and building and building. And the way that the mechanics work for the Beastmen, like your ability to prevent other factions from ruin dwelling, these guys are now, they're very, very powerful, very dangerous. But the thing is, they only really seem dangerous in the hands of the player. The average beast herd, while they are able to create Herdstones, I don't think when you're playing as like the High Elves, I'm sure some people are thinking now, oh no, the Beastmen are going to ruin my campaigns now. No, not really. The AI's about the same threat as they were before. I mean, occasionally we'll have to deal with a Herdstone, but apart from that, this is really a massive buff for you, the player. Now, is it fun? Absolutely. I feel like, as somebody that doesn't care at all for the Beastmen thematically, that is not really a big fan of like destroying things, this update gives you incentives to play the game the way that you're supposed to. You're supposed to like just go and destroy things. You can set up ambushes a lot easier now, because when you blow up a settlement, you retain a little bit of movement, so you can actually go into a camp stance, so you're ready to ambush the next person as they're coming in. You've got the tools that you need to really put the smackdown very early on and all the way into the late campaign, and I found it enjoyable the whole way through. All the way through the campaign, so that was massive improvement. So yeah, in terms of if I was to give this a rating, this update, I have to give this a 10 out of 10. There's really no way that I can fault it. The Beastmen before were such a terrible faction. You spent most of your campaign hiding and just praying that they don't find you while you're hiding, and that you can just get a small ambush in every now and again, which is probably more lore friendly. And now I'm just like, every turn, battle, 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 just crushing anything. I just like ravenous for more marks of ruination, just more dread, want to kill, kill, kill. And that's, I think, what you're supposed to do with this Beastman. And they hit the nail on the head. And that's on legendary difficulty. So I feel like one of the things with the Wood Elf update is that it favored easy, normal, and hard difficulty, but very hard and legendary kind of got forgotten about because it's not very, in my opinion, it just wasn't that very much fun on those difficulties. But with this, it's kind of the opposite, because on legendary difficulty the enemy are pumping out more armies, which means more dread, more stuff. So the more difficult it is, the more you get. So on all difficulty levels, you're rewarded for just playing the game as it is. They did a great job with this. There's no other way to put it. And that's I think the Beastmen update. I think we've covered pretty much everything here now. If there's something that you had a question about that I didn't cover, I'm going to be starting a live stream right now. I'm going to be playing as Malagor the Dark Omen down over here. We're going to be using old flying stinky boy. Yes, he does fly now. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Oh man, no, it stinks like shit. It's Malagor. We're going to be playing that campaign. So if you've got any further questions, come on to that. And here's the thing, I've got a bit of a tradition with these Beastmen update like first live streams. It happened with the Greenskin one, and it happened with the Wood Elf one. With the Greenskin campaign, my battle against Gorfang Rotgut, I lost it and got Grimgor's army wiped out. And in the Orion campaign, I lost the initial battle, the initial ambush against the Beastmen, and you know, had to lick my wounds for a few turns. Orion got wounded on turn 1, essentially. Will that happen today with the Beastmen? I don't know. We'll find out. Anyway, funny thing is, if that does happen, your Horde could get wiped out. Anyway, that's the end of this one here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you're looking forward to the Beastmen. There's a lot of things to be hyped about. Obviously, I didn't cover any of the DLC stuff, but that stuff is to come. I think the Beastmen update is amazing. Let me know in the comments below what you think. And also, if you've got any further questions, do feel free to come to the live stream, and we'll talk more Beastmen related goat fuckery. Anyway, that's the end of this one. Appreciate you, and I'll see you next time, fuckers. Bye.